I could have died. I could have had a stroke. I could be on a feeding tube. I could be paralyzed. There are so many outcomes that have happened like that with other people. And for me to have no deficits after this is truly a miracle. And I'm so grateful for every day. I really am.
What happens when a person almost dies? How does this Christian handle losing her identity as a nurse? Welcome to Bereaved But Still Me. Our purpose is to empower members of our community. I am Michael Lieben and the father of 3 children, Idan, Sapir, and Liel. Liel, my youngest daughter, was born with a heart defect and later developed autism and epilepsy. Losing her at 15 is what has brought me here to be the host of this program. Our guest today is Julie Hedenborg, a certified registered nurse anesthetist, a wife, mother, podcaster, and author. Julie was a nurse for 24 years until she had a life-threatening injury to her neck in 2015. At one point, she was in an ambulance and wondered if she was going to survive. That experience changed her life and helped her see her priorities clearer. Shortly after that, her scoliosis caused her to be too disabled to perform her nursing duties, and so she had to leave a career that she had worked very hard to attain. As a Christian, she felt that God called her to a new ministry. She now has a Christian podcast where she shares miracles and testimonies from people from around the world. She has over 2 million views on YouTube alone, and she has written a book about her faith journey. In this episode of Bereaved But Still Me, we'll be talking with Julie about what it was like for her to lose her career, what caused her to start her podcast, and why she chose to write her book. Julie, thank you so much for joining us on Bereaved But Still Me.
Thank you for having me, Michael. I love your show. I love what you're doing for people.
Well, thank you. That's very kind. Why don't we just get right to it? Why did you decide to become a nurse?
I think from a young age, the human body always fascinated me. And I still remember being injured as a child and my mom putting a Band-Aid on my knee and taking it off like a week later and seeing that it had healed. And my mom explained to me, your body healed itself. And I was just very fascinated with how all of that works. I remember even in elementary school, a friend of mine, her father brought an animal brain to the science fair. I think it was a monkey brain and it was in a jar. And that was huge for me. I was a little disappointed. It didn't look as fancy as I'd hoped. And then as I got older, I just have a love for people. And so I think nursing was a natural combination of the human body and people all together doing something, feeling like it's actually making a difference for someone.
I would imagine that at that age, the body healing itself, or just removing a Band-Aid and like, hey, where did it go? That would be your first sort of look at something miraculous, right?
Yes, truly.
It is kind of miraculous the way it works. That's when you're a little child. So now you get a little bit older. What reinforces this? I got to be a nurse.
I think going into anesthesia school, I was drawn into that. That brought my fascination with the human body even higher. I really thought going to anesthesia school, I would understand the human body, finally understand how all of this works. And I love the technology. I loved being there for someone, at a vulnerable time where they're having to go through surgery and seeing them come through it successfully, almost always. We do have traumas and things that happen sometimes in the OR, so it's a very stressful job, but it was overall just a hugely rewarding profession, and I loved doing it.
Okay, so you became a nurse, but then you decided to become an advanced practice nurse. You're going to have to help me out with the terminology because I'm not sure I know what that means. But the other question also is, why did you decide to go to college to be a certified registered nurse anesthetist?
Yes. Well, I feel like that was also something God led me to do. I originally came out of college. I had a degree in healthcare administration, and I decided I really wanted more of the interaction with people than I was getting in that profession. So I did go back to nursing school, and then I came out. I did a critical care internship right out of school, which is just a huge opportunity because normally you can't go into the ICU without floor experience. So working in the CVICU, that was almost 2 years. And then I decided to go to anesthesia school. I had some people that were mentors to me that kind of influenced me that direction. And it is a higher paid position. So that was part of it. I always wanted to be able to support myself and live comfortably. So that was one piece of it, if I'm honest.
Well, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw my mother struggle a lot. My parents divorced when I was young, and financially things were really tough for her. And I knew I wanted to do something at a level where I didn't have to struggle. So that
Mhm.
was a part of it as well. It was perfect for me. I loved that job, loved seeing the surgeries, even just seeing people get better is really beautiful.
Those of us who've raised children with heart disease have no small experience with the nursing side of hospitals. And you kind of confirm what I already knew. The kind of person that goes on to be a nurse, it has to be somebody special or it isn't going to work. So there has to be something special about you in your personality that says, this isn't just about doing better. This isn't just about the money side of it, which I agree is important. But I really think that you got to be special. I've met you only twice now, but you must be because who else would do it?
No, well, thank you for that.
Well, it's very, very hard work. I'm sure it's rewarding, but it's the kind of thing I know I personally could never do. It's just very, very hard. And a lot of people would understand that. So when we see the nurses who are there every day and they're around the clock and they do these terrible shifts, they're just special people. And I think that needs to be said.
Well, thank you for that, Michael. Very sweet.
But what does it mean to be an advanced practice nurse? What some of the practicality of that?
Oh, it felt like a perfect fit for me. There were students that I used to work with at the job that I held in the last couple of years. I really enjoyed helping to train them. It made for a long day, a lot of talking as you're doing everything, but it was really neat to see the light bulbs going off and to help them find their passion in anesthesia. And as far as the patients, again, just seeing them come through something that's very stressful, and I used to love waking them up, and when they, you see them beforehand and they were naturally be anxious, and you
Uh-huh.
could help them with that. And some of that is pharmacologic, but you can soothe them and get them through the procedure, keep them warm, take care of all the things that no one else is looking at while they're going through this experience. And then, at the end, they can open their eyes and they're like, it's done. It's just the best feeling.
Oh, you know what?
I
I
think I
had
was
that from the other side. I had a gallbladder removed about 28 years ago. And everything is fine. I'm a little nervous. I don't exactly know what's going to happen. It's laparoscopy, which they said was easy. And I guess it was. But you're in there and they put the mask on, and it's a little hard to start breathing because you don't know what's coming in. And then they started wrapping my feet. And I just said, you know what, guys? I've changed my mind. Let's not do this. And the doctor said, yeah, okay, fine, we won't. And the next thing I knew, he was tapping my shoulder saying, wake up, it's over. So
Oh,
I, I,
wow.
I definitely get that. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a great feeling to see them come through it and get them to recovery, and just the relief. It was rewarding. And I felt like God was using me too in that
Mm-hmm.
area. I would actually pray a lot of times on the way to see the next patient. Now,
Mm-hmm.
it is a very busy job, so you don't always have the time to sit and pray with every patient. It's actually probably more rare, but occasionally you're waiting on a surgeon or you have that time, and we have that blessing of being able to see their chart if they have faith, what kind of faith they have.
Oh,
And you can offer sometimes if you see they're not, I don't push it on anyone, but sometimes I've never had anyone say no when you offer, you want me to pray with you before we go back? Or sometimes they'll have a chaplain with them.
mm.
So I do feel like God was kind of leading me with each patient. I had had some miscarriages myself. So when I'd have a patient who had a miscarriage, I felt like I could relate to her. And if I had time, there were just times I got to connect with her. I saw God use me in that role in different ways. So.
You are listening to Bereaved But Still Me. If you have a question or comment that you would like addressed on our program, please send an email to Michael Lieben at michael@bereavedbutstillme.com. That's michael@bereavedbutstillme.com. This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The opinions expressed in the podcast are not those of Hearts Unite the Globe, but of the hosts and guests, and are intended to spark discussion about issues pertaining to congenital heart disease or bereavement.
Julie, being a nurse was your identity. What happened in 2015 that changed all of that?
Oh, that was a big year for me. I have scoliosis, and I've had it for a long, long time. and I had gone to get a treatment to help my back pain from a specific practitioner. They manually turned my neck 3 times. After the treatment, over the next week, I developed a lot of, even after that night, just driving away, I felt a weird pain in my neck that had not been there before. And over the week, I had lost a lot of my range of motion. I couldn't turn my neck. I had pain that was waking me up at night. It wasn't responding to anything. And I started getting dizziness. And then on day 9, I had a vision change. And it was very subtle. I didn't realize how serious it was. I was calling this person and saying, something's wrong ever since we did this. And I wasn't able to get back in, which is a good thing. So I'm having all this pain. My husband's out of town. I'm with my kids. After the vision change, I knew something wasn't right, but I still was blowing it off. I didn't want to go to the ER. I kept thinking, maybe I just need to eat something. Again, it sounds very dramatic, but it was also subtle. It was just quick. And in my kitchen, all of a sudden, I felt something flood through my body. I've never felt this before, but it was an urgency that flooded over me. It gave me goosebumps up and down my body. I truly think it was an angel. And I didn't hear words. I didn't see anything. I just felt this overwhelming urgency. You have to go to the ER right now. And it shook me. And at that moment, my mother-in-law walks in through the back door and she looks at me and I'm standing there stunned. And she's like, "What? Are you okay?" And I said, "No." I said, "This is ridiculous. I have to go to the ER." So I go to the ER and fast forward, they end up doing a CAT scan. They find that 2 arteries to my brain have dissected. The left side was dissected all the really far down. I had an aneurysm also at the level we were working, those days prior. They get an ambulance to take me to the hospital.
Wait
downtown.
1 second. I have to ask you.
Yeah.
2 arteries are opened up. How do you live like that for was it a week and a half? How do you live like that?
Well, this was a vertebral artery dissection. Essentially what happens, they're not cut open. The dissection, there's 3 levels of an artery, 3 layers to an artery. And what happens is they detach internally and they can collapse down inside the artery. Right. Or essentially what happens is there's an injury inside the artery. And you can either have an anoxic brain injury where there's no blood flow coming through, or you can have a clot that naturally starts to form because it's an injury. And then the clot eventually goes to your brain and it can kill you. It has killed people before. It's a rare injury that can happen. People can have them and not even know that they have it and it can resolve, but it has killed people before, usually by stroke. Yes. So I was having small strokes is what was happening. And I did not know that's what was happening.
How did you not know that, nurse?
I know it's a valid question. They were very small.
I don't mean to laugh. I apologize for that. But nurse, how did you not know that?
I know. I did neuro ICU and I did neuro anesthesia. I just didn't. I thought it was something so small. It was so quick and so small. I knew something was wrong. I did not think, it's probably a stroke. I just didn't think that. And I drove
in your
myself.
Work, did you not come in contact with people who were having series of small strokes? Maybe you never saw it.
Anesthesia. Well, I did see it one time as a nursing student. I did see it one time and her eyes kind of moved funny and then she wasn't responding and then she was. So she didn't tell me what she experienced. Okay. Yeah, that's a valid question. It's totally a valid question.
No, I forgive you. You've never seen it as a nurse anesthetist. Wow.
I thought I had heard of this injury and I'd been warned about this with this treatment, but I really thought that people always died at the time that it happened. I didn't know you could walk around with it like this.
It's the gamble.
Assuming that's what it was. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
I could die during this procedure, but as long as I get out of it, I must be okay. Well, okay. That's one way to look at it, nurse. I don't mean to laugh or make light of it. I'm so happy that you're here and I'm so happy that you're alive. And I'm so happy that this did not kill you and that you did catch it. In Hebrew, we have an expression that the shoemaker's kids go without shoes. You of all people, right?
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Yes.
So you went to the hospital and they decided you needed to go somewhere else. What happened in that second ambulance ride that radically affected your life?
Well, it was one ambulance ride. They wanted to send me downtown to the neuro ICU to be admitted. The doctor in the ER that saw me didn't actually know what they were going to do next with me. She said she couldn't believe I was sitting there talking to her. alert, just
Right.
completely fine with what she saw on my CAT scan. So they put me in the ambulance, and I heard the paramedic and the driver talking to one another as I'm also Googling, what is the prognosis of this? Because I didn't see this in the OR a lot. As I'm Googling it, it says prognosis for those that survive. So I immediately put my phone down and tried to fight the panic that was wiping over me. And I heard the ambulance driver talking to the paramedic, and they said, we have to be super careful on this ride. We cannot hit any bumps. We cannot. And I realized, like, oh my goodness, I could have a clot that could go to my brain and kill me. And I panicked, and I prayed. I prayed to God. I said, God, I'm not ready. I'm not ready.
Yeah.
And it just really hit me. I may not go home tonight. I may not go home. And in that moment, it was life-changing for me because, a lot of things go through your head in that moment. Did my family know just how much I love them? Did I love well enough? Did I fulfill God's plans for my life? Did I matter? Did I make a difference? And I cried out to God. I said, God, I would love to just share you with just one more person, anyone. Just let me share you with someone. And that was my prayer in the ambulance that day.
Well, two things to say here. First of all, the ambulance drivers maybe didn't realize who they had in the car who understands what they're talking about, because that's rare enough. And the other thing is, I think that with all the danger and all the fear, God had a plan for you that wasn't to end it right there. So that was good. And that's the sort of thing that you don't know until you know it. And thirdly, and this is super important, everybody out there, a little Google is not a lot of knowledge. Stop Googling. Yeah. Stop Googling. You're going to hurt yourselves. It's wild to me that you had that experience and that it was happening live and in your field. Mm-hmm. You understood what was being said.
I did feel an immediate peace come over me after I prayed. And I realized at that moment, whatever flooded over me in the kitchen that told me to go to the ER is still with me. And I knew at that point, it hit me. I've been told to come here. God, I'm in God's hands. And at this point, I just have to trust him. And all the fear went away. I chatted with the paramedic the rest of the way to the hospital. They couldn't believe I was completely intact, and they were very impressed with the CT, the length of the dissection. And you don't want to be impressive in a hospital. You want to be unremarkable. You don't want to be impressive. So yes, I'm extremely grateful. I could have died. I could have had a stroke. I could be on a feeding tube. I could be paralyzed. There are so many outcomes that have happened like that with other people. And for me to have no deficits after this is truly a miracle. And I'm so grateful for every day. I really am.
If you've enjoyed listening to this program, please visit our website, heartsunitetheglobe.org, and make a contribution. This program is a presentation of Hearts Unite the Globe and is part of the Hug Podcast Network. Hearts Unite the Globe is a nonprofit organization devoted to providing resources to the congenital heart defect community to educate, empower, and enrich the lives of our community members. If you would like access to free resources pertaining to the CHD community, please visit our website at congenitalheartdefects.com for information about CHD, hospitals that treat CHD survivors, summer camps for CHD families, and much, much more. Julie, why did you feel that you were called to write a book?
I never wanted to write a book. And actually, I had been approached by a ministry about writing a book for the podcast that I do as a compilation book of different miracles that I've shared on my platform. And I was kind of getting that underway. And one day I felt God speak to me, which may sound weird to people, but I felt I was actually going through my husband's office one day, bringing him lunch. And there was a year, actually it was 2015, the crazy year I had my neck injury. And that year, our Christmas card was a comical card. Our kids were breaking down. It really mirrored everything I had just gone through with the injury and leaving the hospital. They told me, you may still have a stroke for 3 months. The aneurysm probably won't rupture. And we're in the middle of this park trying to take our Christmas card pictures. And it was crazy. And the photographer, bless her heart, she shot a picture of the chaos And every mom can relate to this. But as I went through my husband's office, the photo was on his bookshelf. And I felt the Lord say to me, that is the cover of your first book. It was not the book I wanted to write. And I was like, no, please. That's how I knew it was him, that I heard in my head. And I prayed about what to share and what he wanted the book to be about. And I felt like he showed me a message for people that were struggling coming out of COVID. And he showed me a little bit of my own walk, highlighted some things for me, just the power of surrendering my life. Because after the injury, I really did fully surrender my life to Christ. And there was a lot of power in doing that. And it changed my life completely. And he showed me 5 pitfalls that I tend to fall into that sabotage who I am in Christ. And I highlight those in the book. There's a lot of humor. There's some funny situations that are relatable. There's some funny photos, but I highlight the 5 pitfalls that I struggle with, and they're fear, comparison, perfectionism, isolation, and self-neglect. So there's a lot of self-care in the book, but I felt like the Lord was showing me that a lot of people are distracted right now and they've forgotten my promises to them and who they are in me. And I have a plan. I'm really hopeful that it will inspire a lot of people. There's science and statistics on social media, what isolation does, and there's scripture that partners with the science. And I, obviously, with my background, having a Master of Science, I found that super interesting to see those coincide. So I really pray that it will bring breakthrough for people that read it. But yes, it was not the book that I thought I was going to write coming out of the gate.
Did you think at the time that highlighting some of your own foibles would be a way to tell people that they're not alone, that you're perhaps maybe even a role model? Say, this is okay. We make mistakes. We fall. We do things, and then we get up.
Yes, I feel like we truly connect when we do get vulnerable and share from our hearts. And I do share results from a brain scan that I had done showing PTSD. I talk about therapy. I talk about a lot of things were very vulnerable for me to share. But I feel like, and being a nurse for 20 some years, taking care of women from different cultures and all different ages and all different socioeconomic statuses, like, we're really so much more alike than what we realize. None of us have it all together. And I hope that it inspires every reader to remember who they are in Christ and that breakthrough is possible, and to get back out there again in community and not have fear be such a driver right now. There's more for each of us.
Can you share with us one example of the kind of miracle that you read about?
Oh my goodness.
Just
I have
one.
over 100.
Just
okay.
one.
Okay. There was a man.
I want people to buy the book, but just one.
Yeah. Well, the book doesn't showcase any of the miracles. The book is simply the message from God that I had for me in my walk and becoming who I am supposed to be in Christ. But as far as,
I'd still like to hear one miracle.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not giggling at it. I want to be very clear. I'm just enjoying our conversation, but I really would like to hear one.
Yes, I have a miracle of a man who was caught up into the funnel cloud of a tornado.
Wow.
And he was transported in the funnel of the tornado a distance about a half mile away.
Wow.
They don't know how I survived. And he was thrown over a sawmill and he came out of that. There are many pieces to his testimony. There was a Satanist who was 20-year Satanist who ended up, he was going to kill a pastor. He plotted for a year. He ended up having an encounter with the Holy Spirit. He's now on fire Christian. There was a Muslim saved by Jesus twice, now a Christian, a woman who was trafficked in Vegas who had an encounter with Jesus and is now delivered, has a school around the world to help women come out of trafficking. I have a dolphin miracle coming up.
Wow, that's good.
A man who was paralyzed for 10 years who was healed. There's medical records. That was at a prayer event that he was at. And it's on video. It's just, I had no idea I would be sharing these type things.
That's nice. Tell us, where can we find your book?
My book is called Picture Perfect by Julie Hedenborg, and you can find that at Amazon or Barnes and Noble.
The book is Picture Perfect, Barnes and Noble,
Yes.
Amazon, wherever you find your books. Go out and get this book. Now, one last thing. Our executive producer, Anna Jaworski, has already been a guest on your podcast. So tell us about how that got started and how you feel that is part of God's ministry for you.
Anna is amazing. she's an excellent example of when you pray and you seek God's will and you follow his leading, what you can do. And I think what she's done in this community is phenomenal. And I know that God's ministry, the way I know this is a ministry, the messages that I get from people, I pray specifically, Lord, send them exactly where they need to go and help them soften their hearts, open their ears so they can receive what you want them to hear. And I get so many messages. One of them I just got recently said, my computer wasn't even on and it came on and your video started playing. It's absolutely amazing. And I've gotten that a few times actually, but I feel like God also uses it to connect people. I have miracles of deliverance from major addiction. I have a mom who lost a child, and I'm able to connect when I meet people in life that need to hear these testimonies. I feel like God helps me connect them. There was a foster mom miracle, and I got to connect her recently to someone who heard it. It was like, oh my goodness, this is exactly what I needed to hear. And so they're praying together. That's been such an amazing piece of it for me, that I feel like to see God is using it in a ways that I never even expected.
Maybe you can share with us one piece of advice for people who fear death, who have lost their career to something that is of great value to them, as in fact you did, and who don't know where to turn.
I would be happy to do that. I've been slow to book on your show because I felt like so many people on your show have dealt with such major things. I know Tara recently was facing her own terminal diagnosis. You've had people who have lost children, and I felt like losing a job. Well, this was a career that I thought was going to be my calling, and it was difficult to leave my job, but there's so many people facing different things. And I feel like no matter what it is, for me, the number one thing that you have to do that's critical is to surrender to God. In that moment of hearing a terminal diagnosis or something's happening to your child and you feel like you have no control and you don't understand what's going on, you've got to ask God to help you, ask him to come into your situation and pray. You got to choose to trust him even when it's hard and you don't know why things are happening the way they are. Number two, I think you also have to allow yourself to feel whatever you feel. I had moments where I was praying to God and I'm like, God, I'm mad. I wasn't mad at him. I was mad at the person in my mind. My career ended up ending and I was so upset by that. And I was just like, God, how are you going to use this? I don't understand, but I just kept trusting him. But I think processing, especially those really heavy things, you've got to have some grace for yourself to just feel whatever you're feeling. I think number three, just interviewing so many people who've gone through things like this, journaling. I know it's a practical thing, but whether it's gratitude that you're, every day focusing on something you can be grateful for, but also feel free to let it rip. You can get ugly in your journals, express what you need to express so you can process all of this. And then number four, I think it's really important, and maybe this comes from being a clinician. I do think in the Christian community, there are people that are like, well, you just pray and God can heal anything. But I think sometimes God puts special anointings on different professionals, and sometimes we need to get professional help, and God can show us who that might be. And I think you just need to stay open. I know I have received some professional help and it's been an amazing blessing for me. So I'm really grateful for that. So those are just a few of the things that I would like to offer your listeners.
Where can we find your podcast?
My podcast is available on Spotify and essentially almost any podcast platform. And the name of it is called Everyday Miracles Podcast with Julie Hedenborg.
And we'll put that in the show notes so that people can find it. Julie, thank you so much for joining us on Bereaved But Still Me.
No, thank you for your time today, Michael. I appreciate it so much.
And that concludes this episode of Bereaved But Still Me. I want to thank Julie Hedenborg for sharing her experiences with us. Please leave a review of our program on whatever platform you're using to hear this episode, and I'll talk with you soon. But until then, remember, moving forward is not moving away.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you have felt supported in your grief journey. Bereaved But Still Me is a monthly podcast, and a new episode is released on the first Thursday of each month. You can hear our podcast anywhere you normally listen to podcasts at any time. Join us again next month for a brand new episode of Bereaved But Still Me.